Did I need to push anything here? We're live. Okay. We are on the air in 40 seconds on the radio, and we are on YouTube at the moment. About to start Fired Up with Bob Irwin. So hang loose, and we'll be there as soon as the radio guy comes up online. And away we go. Oh, I'm right in front of the French flag. But well, let me get a little closer. There we go. Yeah, that's and we are shooting down each other's airplanes and having a wonderful time.
Putin's really going to get crazy over that one.
Oh, depending whose version you believe, they warned him 4 to 10 times to get out of the airspace, and he didn't react. You'd almost think he didn't hear him or something. I mean,
and Putin says he was only half a mile in their airspace.
Oh yeah, well, it's only on the map it's only like that far. I looked. It's, don't pay any attention to this part of the YouTube show, folks, because it doesn't count.
Well, 40 seconds has certainly passed.
Their time seems to be
just commercials on my end.
When we're going off the air, he always says like 10 seconds, and it's now, and he clicks you off. He says 30 seconds, and he clicks off after 10. It's hard for us to coordinate because we obviously have watches running at different speeds.
Mm-hmm.
In radio land, it's there.
Just commercials, but I would just go ahead.
Okay.
It's just repeating on a loop. So
good evening and welcome to Fired Up. Hopefully you're listening to us out there on KSHP AM radio. And we are also simultaneously broadcasting on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. Welcome to the show. We are in a little bit of an attorney quandary this evening. I normally have an attorney on, and the one schedule got tied up in a trial he didn't expect to go, and the backup attorney is in Wyoming just finishing a case, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't have a lot of legal opinions this evening's show. However, I do have a lot of law enforcement opinions in the presence of Phil Ramos, retired LVMPD. Phil, if you can give a little bit of your background to the people out there.
Well, I was retired a few years ago from Metro. I spent 33 years there. My last 12 years were in homicide. Handled around 345 murders, probably just as many suicides, and about 50 officer-involved shootings. So my area of expertise is in major crime scene investigations, homicide investigations, and a few years of undercover work.
Oh yeah, well, there's some stories about that also. Yes, that shouldn't be shared on the air. Anyway, we're here talking about guns and related politics and self-defense issues. We always begin with a number of shooting cases. The idea here is to educate the listeners so you get an idea of what happens in real shooting cases and why they were right and why they were wrong. It is not the point of myself or Phil or any of our guests to second guess people at crime scenes. So we don't use anybody's name ever, but do an explanation of what happened and what the result was, and then what he could have done different, if it was right, if it was wrong. Even if it was right, maybe another thing, he could have tweaked it a little bit and saved himself a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Let's see, some of these are good shootings, some are bad. They're all food for thought. So we're going to start out. This was KTVA TV 11 in Anchorage, Alaska, last week on the 13th, actually. A home invasion was cut short when a gun-toting homeowner fired shots at the suspects. We always like that. Shortly after 8 a.m., Anchorage police responded to a home during an apparently attempted home invasion. The suspects approached the home. When the resident opened the door, one of the suspects pepper sprayed him. In response, the homeowner, who had his gun with him, he fired several shots with a handgun that he had with him at the door. The suspects turned and fled into a vehicle. About 45 minutes later, a man with a gunshot wound to his backside, that's the polite way of saying he got shot in the butt, showed up at a local hospital. There are conflicting witness statements. The police do not have a number of the suspects' descriptions or type of vehicle. Besides absorbing some of the pepper spray, the homeowner was not injured. Police are investigating if the wounded man was involved in the incident. Reality is, of course, they're quite sure it's him. He had pepper spray on him and a bullet in his butt, and it matched everything the homeowner said. A couple of things for discussion here. For whatever reason, the homeowner answered the door with a gun in his hand. Probably not a bad idea. He wasn't expecting anybody. This is apparently a fairly rural house. So we can't really fault the guy for that. I've been known to do that. And most of us that are around law enforcement or crime detection or anything, firearms instructors, we tend to do that. It's always easier to put it away than go get it when you discover you needed it. In this case, it obviously or probably saved this guy's life. The reason I picked this case out was the pepper spray. Pepper spray is used reasonably often by criminals as a disabling tool to their victims.
Yeah.
We've seen it used in 7-Eleven robberies and home invasions like this. They will use the spray to disable, disorient their victim. Purchasable anywhere. So, but it's common in business robberies and home invasions and sexual assaults. You've seen.
Well, yeah, and the thing
these
about
things.
it is, when the bad guys take it up a level to use pepper spray, or I mean, that is a disabling agent, and it does put the victim in more of a defensive position than he would be if the guy just barged in and pushed him down and said, "We're going to rob your house, stay on the floor, or else I'm going to kick your butt." Once you introduce another level of threat, pepper spray, brandish a weapon, pull a knife, anything like that, now you're just asking for more trouble than you're asking for when you came in the door to rob this guy's house. Even if this guy didn't produce the pepper spray, this man would have justifiably been able to shoot because he was being confronted by a couple of thugs that were in there to do immediate harm to himself, his family, his property. Be that as it may, the pepper spray not only backfired on the bad guys, but it gave the homeowner even more justification. He already had plenty, but it even gave him more justification to discharge his firearm to protect himself. And
Yeah, they're clearly trying to disable him.
well, clearly. And one of them got shot in the buttocks, as Forrest Gump would say. And oh well.
As I'm saying, this is pretty common, and a lot of you out there carry pepper sprays as a defensive tool. And this guy, of course, took a lot of the pepper spray himself. When you spray pepper spray, you're going to catch a lot of the effects of the spray. So it is also a little disabling to you when you use it on them. I recall in the police academy, we always would spray everybody, line them up and whatever, and then give them a task to do. And this is what you have to understand. If you use pepper spray and you're disabled by it, you can keep going. It hurts, but you can fight your way through it. The bad guys don't listen to this show, so I'm only telling the good guys this, but we do that with the kids in the academy and give them a task to do. We would stand there and spray them, and then a training officer would be 20, 30 feet away with a rubber gun, and they were told, when after you're sprayed, go take that gun away from him.
Yeah.
He's going to shoot you with it. Go get him and go get the gun. And crying and coughing and spitting and wheezing, they would all be able to do that to some degree. pepper spray hurts some people more than others.
Yeah, it does.
Some are less affected by it, and there's reasons for that. Your diet, if you eat chili peppers for breakfast every morning, that sort of thing. But the kids could always get through that, and in effect, in this training exercise, save their own lives. So it's
And just on a
doesn't hurt.
I had it happen to me, not just in training, but during an arrest. We had a bad guy, and my partner was on one side of him. I was on the other side, and we had him against the car, and he was throwing a fit. So my partner takes out the spray, and he's going to spray him. But the bad guy moves back, and just as my partner's discharging the spray, he moves back, and pow, I get it right in the face.
You're sure that was an accident?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then, wait a minute. It was Whitey Frank, so maybe it wasn't an accident.
Yeah, I would question that. Whitey, with apologies, you have a reputation. He may be watching this. We're still in touch. How you doing, my friend? Anyway, it wouldn't hurt if you really want to take this to a degree that you spray yourself or have someone spray you with it while you've got some cloths and things to make yourself better.
Yeah.
So you know what the effects will be, and you realize you can fight your way through it, because you can. So, but just bear in mind, if you use pepper spray, you're going to be have a hard time opening your eyes and so forth. But you can. It doesn't hurt less because your eyes are closed. You got to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So open your eyes, fight through it. I want to remind you, the gun store, we offer concealed carry classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can find those on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. And we would appreciate if you would friend us on Facebook. There's a sign here in the front of the thing. You can go on Facebook and friend us or like us on Facebook. That would be nice. And we would then be able to get in touch with you, and we have special things to tell you, sales and such over. This is a second story also involving pepper spray. WRCB TV in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is on the 12th. A local family woke up to find burglars inside their Fairfax home early one Thursday morning. One intruder was armed with a tire iron, the other was armed with a can of pepper spray. The homeowner said the two were demanding money, and while one doused him with pepper spray, the other intruder hit him with a tire iron to force his compliance to get the money out of wherever it was. Before the intended victim got hit, however, with the tire iron, he leaned down and grabbed his pistol, racked the slide. He apparently had the gun in his house without a round in the chamber. He racked the slide, and that was enough that both guys turned around and ran. The entire incident was caught on video, a video camera the homeowner had hidden in his back patio, which is where they came in. Interestingly, the video showed four males, all in their late teens, huddled together and apparently planning their robbery. One had a can of pepper spray in his hand and put it in his pocket. Another took a crowbar and wrapped it up in a t-shirt. The two of the four kicked the victim's back door in, and then those two that kicked the door went over to the next house to rob it simultaneously. The two with the pepper spray and the crowbar then entered the first house. So you've got four guys robbing two houses at once. The two who were involved with had the crowbar and the pepper spray. Anyway, after they ran out from being afraid of the homeowner now has a gun, no shots are fired. So they got away. They got him on the videotape and so forth. The article went on to say the family has their sense of security ruined, which goes without saying in a home invasion robbery.
Yeah.
You never will feel the same in your own house. The homeowner in this case had just bought the gun a few days earlier, literally. And even though he didn't fire it, it actually served its purpose. Having the firearm saved them from Lord knows what.
Right. And that might explain why he didn't have a round chambered. Yeah. Because he may not have had the confidence or the experience yet to carry it chambered, ready to fire.
No, it said in the article he'd never fired it.
So
that was the first time the gun ever had a round in the chamber. So
that was probably a smart thing for him to do as far as safety within the home, being a novice gun owner.
Right.
And never having fired a gun. But it certainly puts him at a disadvantage. Even though he had the gun, he still has to take the time to rack around in there and make it ready to be fired. And that half second or 1 second could work against you if the bad guys are prepared to defend themselves as well.
Certainly could. And if these guys ran just from having somebody rack around in the chamber,
Good.
These are not the world's toughest bad guys.
No.
And the other two left when they saw they all left.
Probably in Walmart to get new underwear.
It's but the gun saved the day.
Yes.
Owning the gun stopped 2 home burglaries.
Yes, yes.
Or this first one would be classified as a home invasion, actually. And not a shot was fired. Perfect. The homeowner didn't chase him down the street. Let everybody run. Great idea. The police will find them. They've got clear video of their faces and so forth. And they're all youngsters. They appear to be 16 to 17 years old. I wanted to mention our a printer we use, American Printing, in downtown Las Vegas, 1512 Fremont Street. Does our work for us. Great work, great prices, on time. Give them a call at 702-384-3821. You won't remember that, but you look up American Printing in Las Vegas down on Fremont Street, you'll find it. Tell them Bob sent you. And we will, hopefully you get some good work done. We love these guys. Local small business. Patronize them. I don't get a kickback. They just
Put them on
do
Facebook.
good work and I like them.
Put them on your Facebook page. A link to them on your Facebook page.
I should. I have it. Wow. Now I feel bad. Sorry, American Printing guys. A brief rundown of a story here in Las Vegas. This was carried by Channel 3 News on the 12th. I'm sure many of you saw this. A Las Vegas man interrupted some thieves that were burglarizing a neighbor's home. He said he walked out to see what was going on after. His neighbor called. His neighbor was away from the house. Saw someone in his house on a video system that he can play back on his cell phone. And so the guy walked over to see what's going on. He said he was pretty hyped up, adrenaline was flowing. I didn't know how many people were in the house. He knew somebody was in the house because the neighbor told him that. I'm on my way, go look at my house. So I didn't know how anybody would react to me being there. After a few minutes of him standing outside the house, 4 men rushed out of the house, and he confronted them with his camera, his cell phone camera in one hand and his gun out in the open, not pointed, but showing. The confrontation lasted about 30 seconds, with the neighbor getting a clear video of the guys' faces and so forth as they tried to get away. I don't know if you remember seeing the video, but they're in an SUV and the last guy dived in the back window
With the hood over his face.
SUV to escape.
Yeah.
He said his intent, the neighbor said his intent was to stop the guys until the police shut up, and he was prepared to defend himself if something bad happened. And they took off a few minutes before the police arrived. What a great neighbor. The guy's a hero. He didn't do anything stupid like start shooting at these guys. No one mentioned anywhere these guys were armed. At least if they were, they didn't show anything.
Right.
And they were fleeing, so he let them go. With the video and whatever, I understand from an officer I've talked to that they're pretty sure who these guys are. They may be in jail by now. Actually, I was going to run this story last week and ran out of time, but he didn't try to detain them, didn't risk anybody getting injured, didn't fire, no deadly threat, no deadly response. Had he not had a firearm,
And you know,
4-1.
right.
No.
There's been some little bit of controversy over this from people on the other side saying this guy, even though he was armed and was probably capable of defending himself, the argument being that he introduced himself into a situation that had a potential to be very dangerous for everybody involved. Had these guys been the next level of thugs, and had they been armed, there could have been a gunfight out in the street.
Could have been.
You know, it easily could have turned into a really ugly situation. Thank God it didn't. It worked out in the best interest of the victim. His house was being burglarized. The neighbor who came over to thwart the burglary and you know, put himself in harm's way to protect his neighbor, and it worked out great. There is that one little caveat that it could have been worse if these bad guys would have been armed. So It was a judgment call on the neighbor's part. I don't fault him one bit. I would have done the same thing. Maybe I would have been a little more aggressive because of my background, but it worked out for everybody. Hopefully the bad guys will be tracked down and get thrown in the slimer and justice will be served.
Yeah, I mean, I like the guy. He didn't try to enter the
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
He just stood outside and they came out. It wasn't, he didn't go
Right.
in or so and so on.
Right.
He just was observing and he had the gun there just in case. And had they come out with a gun, it would have been a bad situation.
And if you remember the video, he panned down to the license plate before they drove off.
He's
And that
being
was a
like-
great thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was great. That was a good job. on
Perfect
his
guy.
part,
I'd
yeah.
love to be his neighbor anytime. If you're planning a corporate event, as you know, we have machine gun shooting here. You can contact Melissa at thegunstorelasvegas.com. That's our general address, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Put Melissa at, and she'll offer you some discounts on shooting packages and such and so on. We've got a lot of Black Friday weekend specials here. You can also find on that website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. There's going to be a little quiz on there, but it has something to do with this show. And if you get the answer right, you get 10% off or something. I don't know what it is, but I don't know what you're getting, but I know it has something to do with what Phil and I are doing tonight. They're going to ask you a question. If you know the right answer, you get an extra 10% off something. So hopefully you're paying attention. This is tough. This is KOAA TV in Colorado Springs, also on the 12th. A citizen pulled a gun to ward off what is an aggressive panhandler. Police were called to the Come and Go convenience store at Fillmore in North El Paso, if you know where that is, at 7:30 in the morning on reports of a man with a gun. What had happened was a 32-year-old guy, panhandler, started to get aggressive in the parking lot. He apparently was washing windows or something and wanted his money. He had equipment to wash windows. He walked up to this guy's car and started pounding on the customer's windows with his fists. The victim in the car displayed a handgun, and then the panhandler backed off, and the victim drove away, apparently called 911 to report the incident, which was good. The officers responding arrested the panhandler for aggressively panhandling. I guess there's a crime for that. There's a particular charge for that. But he called the police also and said a guy pulled a gun on him, which is now the police fortunately had both sides. The suspect is charged, here it is, with harassment and disorderly conduct. Both are misdemeanors. The Colorado Springs police say the victim was in legal possession of the handgun and will not face any charges. Here, this is right up on the edge. Displaying the gun, they don't claim he pointed the gun at the panhandler, but he showed him he had a gun. That can be brandishing a firearm depending on the jurisdiction you're in. We've got a couple of misdemeanors here. I mean, the guy is violently beating on the window of the car, but he didn't break into the car. Think of where this would be if the guy who was in the car with the gun drove away, had not called 911 to say what happened. Then the police arrive, and this guy says, I'm just trying to wash windows, and a guy pulled a gun on me, scared the hell out of me. I felt my life was in danger. That's why I called you. Then the guy driving the car would likely be in jail. In some jurisdictions that are not as gun friendly as Colorado Springs, he could certainly be in jail now. Very smart that he called 911 after he drove away. He got clear. He didn't drive, home. He drove a couple blocks so the guy couldn't follow him. And he called the police. Very important when you have a confrontation with someone and you leave, which we advise everybody to do, get out of the way so the guy can't hurt you. Don't fail to call the police and tell them what happened, because otherwise
they're only going to get one side of the
only
story.
to get the guy's side,
Yeah, they're only going to get one side of the story, and they have to go by what they're told.
what they know.
And then that's why it's always such a good idea when you're involved in a situation like that to tell the cops what happened, explain to them why you did what you did so that they know why you did what you did. And if you've got, justification for doing what you're doing, then things are going to work out okay. If you overreact, then you overreact, and it's going to be a judgment call on the cops who respond to this to determine, okay, well, I understand why you did that. Hey, don't do that again. Next time you're going to get in trouble, or depending on how far over the line you've stepped, it could have some negative consequences. But you always need to give the cops your version of the story, because if they don't have your version of the story, they only have one version of the story. They may have to take some action that they don't want to if they don't have that information from you.
Exactly. When you arrive at a call for a homicide scene,
yeah,
and there's two guys in the house, and one of them's dead, and the other one's holding a gun.
Yeah,
you only got one side of the story.
Right.
You want to know what happened. You could look to hear what the the dead guy could say, but you don't. So the live guy is the one that gets downtown and talk to me and whatever. Always make sure they get both sides. You don't have to stay at the scene, but call and say, I'm over here and this is what happened, and this is me, and here's my ID, come look at my gun, whatever.
If we did have an attorney sitting right here, he's going to say, don't ever tell the cops.
He's going to say, don't talk to the cops.
Keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything to them.
And I was kind of looking forward to that debate between you and a defense attorney, but they both have their points. But what I tell people isn't say absolutely nothing. You tell the police, here's my ID. I live here. I'd like to talk to my attorney before I make a statement. But you identify yourself. You tell them where the gun is. It's over there. I don't have it in my hand. It's over there. And that who you are.
Right.
You can't say nothing because they have no idea. At least tell them you're the homeowner, and sir, I'd really like to talk to have my attorney here before I start talking.
Right.
I'm all wound up right now. And they'll say, fine. You said the magic word, attorney. They're not going to question you.
Right. And at the point, you're not a suspect anyway. If you're a suspect, you're going to know it. So I've encountered that many, many times. And what I tell people, I said, absolutely. Well, if you need a ride to your attorney's office, or if your attorney will come down here, we have no problem. We just really need to know what happened from you. And if you want an attorney to help you with it, that's fine. 99% of the time, the attorney is going to say, don't say a word to them. But I have had attorneys say, why don't you ask me the question? I'll confer with my client, and then I'll tell you what my client has to say. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But, we're never going to deny anyone their Fifth Amendment rights. It just doesn't happen, especially in a murder investigation. But I can understand why people take that position. I've seen them take that position. I've seen them take the opposite position. And in the times when they haven't asked for an attorney and told us what happened, and it was a straight up self-defense issue or something like that, there's never been any negative consequences. When a killer decides he wants to tell the cops what happened and why he killed somebody, attorney's not going to stop him from telling them that. And I've had that happen too. They said, look, this is what happened, man. I lost my mind. I was pissed off. I came home, found my wife in bed with another guy, and I just went crazy. Yeah, I shot him. Okay.
Because they believe that's justified.
Yeah.
And actually it isn't. You're not allowed to kill your wife for that reason. I know that seems like a fun law, but that's the way it is. It's I wanted to bring something else up here just as an oddity. The gun store, we're working on a boutique marketing project that I'd like to find a partner to get involved. Has to do with firearms. We're looking at a $10,000 to $20,000 partnership investment to do a little bizarre thing with some firearms stuff. If that fits you, drop me an email at bob@firedupmail.com, and I'll explain it to you what's going on. I have a bizarre idea I think could work, and that's all I'm going to say. But you can, anything you want to ask about, you can get a hold of me at bob@firedupmail.com. This is, yes, this is Albuquerque, New Mexico, on the 20th, a few days ago. A local resident, he's 70 years old. He went into his garage in the early morning Tuesday to find a guy there in the garage loading stuff into a Jeep that wasn't their Jeep, it was the guy's Jeep. He's loading stuff into the Jeep. He confronted the guy who didn't really respond, just kind of looked at him and kept on loading stuff. Didn't seem to care that this 70-year-old resident was like, what are you doing in my garage putting stuff in your Jeep? So the victim then, according to police report, the victim then went back into the house, armed himself with a shotgun, informed his wife what was going on. She, the wife, 66-year-old, armed herself with a pistol, and they both came back out in the garage and held the guy at gunpoint. Police arrived a few minutes later to find the suspected thief on his knees with his hands behind his back, leaning against the car that he'd arrived in. It turned out it was stolen from a nearby home. The cops, you know how you run across really stupid bad guys on occasion? Mm-hmm. This is the really stupid bad guy story this week. The arriving officers notice that he's wearing on his left wrist a band that they issue at the Metropolitan Detention Center when you're in jail. He turns out he'd been released from jail the previous morning and was still wearing his ID wristband for whatever reason. A spokesman for the Albuquerque Police Department said this could have been a very traumatic experience for the couple. They handled it really well. Despite the couple's heroics, the police urged people to call them and not get involved with the crooks. Agree. You find a guy in your garage loading stuff in the Jeep he just stole. Don't go back out and confront him. Just call 911. He ignored them anyway. So there wasn't a report on this as to why the guy was in jail previously, but they just OR'd him. But now we've got more charges of attempted burglary and auto theft.
And you know, you know what this sounds like to me? Sounds like this guy wanted to go back to jail. It's probably the only place he was getting fed. So I mean, in order for someone to be that stupid, there's got to be a reason behind it. You know, and a lot of people do that. But a couple did the right thing. They absolutely, thank goodness he wasn't in Texas. He'd be dead.
Well, yeah, they would. We've got one of those stories later on. This is a good thing. They did fine. You know, I would agree with the guy from Albuquerque PD that it would have been probably smarter to just stay in the house and call the police. And if the guy is starting to leave with their stuff before the police get there, maybe you walk out and go, stop. But why not let the police handle it? If the guy had been armed, lots of things could have happened wrong. They're making an assessment looking at the guy. They apparently didn't feel he was that big a threat, and he obviously wasn't. So, you know, I have to defer to their judgment. But once again, no shots fired, nobody hurt. The guy had a gun, saved the day. Bad guy goes to jail.
Yeah, and here's why the cops will say, don't introduce a gun into a situation where the cops are responding to. And this comes from my experience. If you're standing out there in the driveway and you're holding a gun on the bad guy, which you're doing, you're entitled to do to protect yourself and to try and make sure this guy doesn't get away. The cops don't know what they're dealing with when they roll up. They know what is being reported to them through dispatch to the cops. They're saying, you know, getting a synopsis of the situation. But once the cops get there, do yourself a favor and put your gun down and back away from the situation, because when the cops get there and they see, okay, there's a guy kneeling down there and there's somebody else holding a gun on him, the first thing they're going to tell you is put the gun down, walk away. Because if you do something stupid like, okay, I got him, officer, I got him, and you turn and you point the gun to the officers, guess what? You know, they don't know until they stabilize the situation. They're rolling up on a dynamic call that's progressing in a way, and they have no idea of being able to assess that until they get there and make their assessment right away. That's why you don't want to have a gun in your possession in a situation like that. When the cops roll up, as soon as you see the cops there, you put your gun down, because they'll take care of it now that they're there. Don't take that risk.
I've got to tell you, and congratulations to Metro PD's training regimen on this. I received an email from one of our listeners, and I'm not going to use anybody's name, to tell me about a non-incident that happened to him way up here on the west side of town. The doorbell rang, and he wasn't expecting anybody, so he took his handgun and he walks out and he looks out to people and he sees a Metro officer standing a little bit back from the door. So he opens the door a little bit, holding the gun behind his leg so he didn't upset them. And turned out there were 3 officers. And they asked about a party at his house that had taken place earlier. And he explained that, no, sir, there was no party here. I've been here, you know, there was no party last night. And you know, you got the wrong house, or somebody's,
Messing with the guy.
somebody's messing with him. And the officer said, okay, fine. And, you know, we realized that. And as he relaxed, he brought his hand back around to his side, and they saw he had a gun. And suddenly now one of the officers yells gun, and all 3 of them have drawn their weapons, of course, and said, drop the weapon, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he, oh my God, he forgot he had it in his hand. He said it just came around visible when he relaxed. So he dropped the gun or put it down and showed him his hands, and the officers explained, you know, don't do that, da, da, da. And he said they were so cool and so courteous that he absolutely wanted to commend them for the way they handle it. He says he absolutely understands why, when he suddenly exposed the gun, even though it was pointed down, of course they're going to draw their guns and yell at him to drop the gun. And he said it was tense for 10, 15 seconds while they figured out, you know, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot I had it in my hand, and da, 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 da. And everybody went home and no problems, and everybody shook hands. Handled perfectly. When you have a civilian make a mistake like that, obviously the officers are going to draw their guns. They have to. And he handled it exactly right. And, you know, we can look at 20/20 hindsight. When he looked at the people and saw it was Metro officer, he should have put the gun away then. Instead, he just put it behind his leg and opened the door in natural motion. He didn't know what they wanted. Perfectly handled on both sides. And he wanted me to congratulate the officers. One was a sergeant, apparently, and 2 officers. And
if you find yourself in a situation like that,
great.
If you're able to have the frame of mind that, okay, oh man, I got a gun here, tell the cops, say, officers, I've got a gun in my hand. I've got it because I didn't know who was at the door, and they will tell you what to do exactly from there, so you don't surprise them. Just say, hey, I got a gun. It's in my hand. I was protecting myself.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, great job on both sides. Want to remind everybody, we offer a ladies-only shooting class, personal safety and shooting class, once a month. Next availability is on the class that's Thursday, December 10. Noted ladies instructor, she told me to put noted instructor, Maggie Mordaunt is teaching the class. You can find that on our website, again, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Great class. If you're a woman, you got a gun at home, want to take a class without men sitting in the back telling you quit acting like, you know, that it's ladies only in the class. Great class. This is kind of a follow-up from a story in the Denver Post. I don't believe I covered the story, but there was a follow-up to it. A 33-year-old resident had initially been arrested on suspicion of second-degree murder on November 1st for fatally shooting a 23-year-old intruder. This is the stuff you have when one guy is dead and the other guy, we need the explanation. Prosecutors in Adams County is in Denver. Will not file charges against a man from Thornton who shot and killed an intruder earlier this month. The chief trial deputy said the resident was acting illegally, either in self-defense or to stop a burglar, when he killed one of 3 intruders at the Madison Park Apartments. The intruder was pronounced dead at the Good Samaritan Hospital. Thornton police arrested 2 brothers aged 26 and 24, who they say also illegally entered the apartment with the now deceased home invader. They face charges of robbery and other allegations in the break-in. The 3 exchanged gunfire with the now released resident. Apparently 3 guys broke in. The resident pulled a gun. The 2 other bad guys ran off. They haven't been caught. 1 guy's dead. The police arrive. The homeowner says, this happened, I fired in self-defense. They don't have any other stories.
Mhm.
He was taken to jail until the prosecutor sorted it out. When the homicide detectives got through and they talked to the other 2 guys who they found a few days later and what happened and looked at who was lying and who was telling the truth and so forth and so on. And the attorney for the government said, no problem, it's self-defense, you all have a nice day, and let him go. He told the truth about what happened. He'd make up a story. Eventually, they caught the other guys, and we have evidence and whatever. They look at where the blood stains are and so forth and so on. But he killed a guy. You got a dead guy?
Mhm.
Of course, he went down to the station. And depending on what he said, got his attorney involved, obviously, and no charges filed.
You know, it could be that the evidence wasn't clear enough to indicate that it was self-defense. There could be a number of reasons why it wasn't apparent to the first responding officers and then later the investigating detectives that this was clearly a self-defense issue. I've come across many situations where, you know, I'll talk to someone that defended themselves and fired, and they explain their series of events to me, and the evidence that's at the scene backs that story up. And many of those cases, we document the evidence, we prepare our reports, and we submit them to the DA, and we let the DA decide if they want to press charges. I don't know that I've ever taken someone to jail in a circumstance like this because the evidence was clear cut. I'm certain that had the detectives...
It apparently wasn't clear cut.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm certain that if the detectives would have been convinced that the story fit the gentleman's version of who did the shooting, and the evidence backed up his story, then there was probably no need to take him to jail, to book him, and deprive him of that particular part of the investigation. So there's probably a little bit more to it. I'm sure
there is, you know, and actually, because I pride myself on doing that.
Mhm.
And when I found this story, I went to look up the original story and the police, what information they released. And you know what I got? The guy is not charged with a crime, so we're not releasing any information because we're not charging him. That's what they said.
Wow.
To reporters, not to me. I mean,
Okay.
the reporters tried to go back now when he's found that there are no charges going to be filed. Well, what actually happened? Because they never released the details to begin with, and they said because there's no charges filed, we're not releasing the details.
And there's a lot of things that we look at when we're at a scene. You know, if somebody tells me that the guy was coming at me and he was a foot away and I fired, and we can tell from the evidence
That he
was across the room and he was standing there on the phone talking to somebody when he fired. You know, one lie begets another lie, and that begets another lie.
Yeah, the guy stabbed me and I ran over there, and then I got my gun and I ran back and there's no blood drops, you know, things like that. I mean, people make up nice stories. They don't realize lab techs. They're not as good as on CSI. They don't solve everything in an hour and a half.
Don't get me started.
But when somebody's dead, trust me, they're going to find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Shotgun weddings. I mentioned that on 2 weeks ago on a show that we do weddings here, and I gave the wrong website to look for. If you want to get hitched, we have a wedding chapel here at the gun store, of all things. It's actually pretty hysterical. We've got a major wedding in a couple of days here, actually. 40 guests and all that sort of thing. We do vow renewals or serious weddings, and we're even working on getting an Elvis impersonator to do them, but
Because there's not too many in Vegas.
there's not enough. Yeah, geez. Anyway, if you want to find that, if you're planning on getting hitched, want to see about it, if you go to our regular website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and click on special events, there's a little posting there, and you click it, and that'll give you the weddings and the corporate stuff and all that. But weddings are the first thing there, and they will get a hold of you and do all this good stuff and get you hitched up here at the gun store, and then you can shoot a machine gun or whatever at the same time, and it's a memorable. I don't know why people do that, Phil.
No. I know that. What I'm wondering is, have you ever had anybody want to do a funeral service here?
No.
You know, you think about it. You have a wake, the guy, you know, he was a gun enthusiast, and, you know.
Make a note, no more Ramos, okay? Just,
it could happen.
Wow. I mean, now, let me do the end stuff first, and we'll come back to this one I wanted to talk about. New York Daily News covered a story about Australia because we've had it pointed to by a couple of the left side presidential candidates, how they have no crime and so forth because they took all their guns away, which is, of course, a crock. But long story about their gun crime and stuff. That ain't what I want to cover. We're going to skip. This I want to cover. Some anti-gun groups in the Obama administration have been claiming that gun ownership is dropping in the United States. We've heard that. That more guns are being sold, but it's the same few of us that are buying guns over and over again. There are two states, Illinois and Massachusetts, that keep track of everybody who buys a gun. You have to register all guns. They're registered with the state with all dealers and so forth. Illinois, where you have a firearms owner identification card, shows from 2009 to 2013, there's a 33% rise in the number of people who own firearms. In Massachusetts, their investigation by their 22 News I-team discovered the number of firearms licenses has grown by 65% since 2010. These are the two states that directly track how many new firearms owners there are. And their numbers are up tremendously. So this 3-4 million guns a year that are being sold aren't being sold to the 11 of us who own all the guns. They're being sold in great numbers to new gun owners. They're buying them for self-defense and so forth. This is used as an argument for universal background checks. Universal background checks obviously do not prevent crime. Most murders are committed by people who have never committed a crime, and so forth and so on. So where they have done this universal stuff, New Zealand dismantled its firearm registry, as they said, ineffective in fighting crime. Canada destroyed their long gun registry in 2011. We've got a lot of stuff coming from the left side to do universal background checks and all this sort of thing, which do nothing to prevent crime. I'll get into the data maybe on the next show more. I found a tweet that I really liked in yesterday's paper. Today's paper, Senator Reid, our Senator Harry Reid, sent out a tweet that said, "Dear Republicans, let's close the NRA loophole that lets terror suspects buy Paris-style assault rifles in America." And a guy named D. Cox Boomer responded, "Where did the Paris terrorists buy their rifles in a country that all guns are banned?" And then another guy, Them Mighty Gwyn, added, "We finally found the kind of terrorism libs are willing to fight, NRA terrorism." To say that we have to eliminate assault rifles and that'll stop terrorist attacks, they're already eliminated in France and Germany and so forth, and that's where they have the attacks. You morons.
Yeah, this clown who says, where did the Paris terrorists buy
Right.
rifles?
Yeah.
Because terrorists go and buy rifles. They don't
Yeah.
steal them from other.
They didn't buy them
groups.
from a Paris gun shop because
No.
they don't sell them in France,
No.
They buy them on the street like our bad guys do. December 1920, we've got a gun show coming up at Cashman Center. We'll be down there. We're on YouTube and radio because you're listening to that as we speak. So now I got time. I do. I got about 4 minutes, it looks like. This is a story I don't like. This is WFAA TV in Dallas, Texas. An undercover officer assigned to a task force arrived at a house on Wilbur Street in southwest Dallas shortly after 6 a.m. 3 undercover officers had come to the house with a warrant to place a tracker on a drug dealer's vehicle. One Arlington, Texas officer got out of his truck, put the tracker on the suspect's vehicle when a neighbor came out and confronted him, asked him what he was doing. The officer responded he had dropped something. The reports say that's when the neighbor opened fire with an assault rifle. The guy came out with an AR-15, the neighbor. Another neighbor heard the gunfire, so forth and so on, and they went out and saw this guy. He's all dressed in black. He was wounded. He jumped in a truck and took off. The armed neighbor fired an additional 12 bullet holes in the tailgate of the truck and 4 in the side of the truck. Then went back in the house. They had a standoff. The police arrived, so forth and so on. Turned out these officers in the initial contact were undercover trying to place this thing. They didn't want to tell the neighbor that. And the long and short of it, a Texas prosecutor, retired, told the media that if the neighbor reasonably believed he was stopping a burglary, Texas law allows him to do that. You're allowed in Texas to shoot at fleeing bad guys. So probably this guy's not going to be charged with a crime because Texas law allows that. The officer was injured, but he's going to survive. Shot in the hand and the leg and so forth. He's in stable condition. This is only in Texas. The suspect really presented no danger to the neighbor. He didn't show him a gun. He didn't respond at all. Didn't tell him he's a police officer. He's working undercover. He doesn't want, as far as he thinks, the neighbor is one of the bad guys. He doesn't want the guy to know he's putting a bug on his truck. So they're both misunderstanding what the other one is doing. The undercover doesn't want to talk to the neighbor. And the neighbor then that convinces him the guy's a robber. And in Texas, you can shoot anybody basically that you feel like shooting. Don't do this in any other state. But he may walk away from this, and this is just a stupid thing where you get 2 people involved, that there's no bad guy in this confrontation.
Yeah.
And I know you've had the cases where this has happened locally here.
Yeah. I've been in this situation myself. I worked many years undercover. I looked like a bad guy. I dressed like a bad guy. I played the part of a bad guy. That's what I was doing. And one of the inherent risks of undercover work is when it comes time that you're put in a situation where, oh man, am I going to have to tell these people who I am so I don't get hurt myself because they think I'm a bad guy? That's the role I'm playing. I look like a bad guy. I talk like a bad guy. I'm a bad guy in essence. You have to decide pretty quick whether you're going to give that up, whether you're going to risk the investigation, how long this investigation has taken, who the targets were. Are you going to give that up because someone's coming after you? That's a hard question to answer because I've been in that situation. You don't want to put yourself at unnecessary risk. But the inherent risk of working undercover is people are going to think you're a bad guy. That's why you're working undercover. You want them to think you're a bad guy. You expect to be treated like a bad guy. So when a situation like this happens, that's a tough call. I mean, I've been in these circumstances. Thank God I didn't get to the point where I got shot at, but I almost did. I almost got run over. I almost got beat up because of the appearance of what people thought I was. And that's just the nature of that beast.
Or now that we've robbed the bank, I don't want to split with you anymore. Bang.
Right.
So,
you go into a dope house and you're pretending to be a dope buyer, which you are. You're buying drugs from bad guys, and in order to gain their confidence, you have to buy more drugs. And as you're buying more drugs, you're spending more money. So the bad guy's going to think, hey, this guy's just another dope user. Nobody's going to miss him. Wow, I've got his $5,000. Who cares if he's dead?
We are running out of time. I want to remind you, questions, comments, anything, bob@firedupmail.com. Whoop, it's on that side of the little sticker. And do friend us on Facebook. Phil, I so want to thank you for coming on again.
Always a pleasure.
I missed something not having an attorney to argue with you on a couple of these things. I was looking forward to this. But Alan Butel is out there defending somebody in court today. Hopefully he did a good job. And my backup lady, I said, just finished a murder case in Wyoming. Tough. There's lots of, that's the problem. Attorneys are busy. Once they're on the show, they're busy as all get out, it seems.
Yep.
And
so everybody have a good Thanksgiving.
yeah, a good Thanksgiving. I want to mention too, a little plug for Phil while we're just got a second here. He does investigations of homicides still for private parties where you have a death that you're not confident was done right. You can reach Phil, send it to me and I'll forward it to him.
That's
your
suicides.
contact information. You got a suicide, you don't believe it was a suicide or whatever, where the investigators have written it off and that's the end of the case. Sometimes you want to get a second opinion from, and that Bill does that now to, like I say, this is the guy with the 80% solve rate that on homicide cases, which is unheard of in the real world.
In the real world.
Bright guy. And
A lot of luck involved.
yeah, you were lucky for 13 years, huh? It's,
Yeah.
Sure, you just got cases that were easy and that was that.
No, they weren't easy.
No, I know they gave you a lot of cases that looked impossible just for that reason. Are we all set? Thank you for listening, guys.